Hey everyone. So, in this module, we are talking about speaker responsibility. And one of the reasons we talk about speaker responsibility is because your speech has consequences. So, in this video, it's called Speech is a Powerful Lord, and that is a quote that I will get to in just a minute. But the essence of this video is to remind you that words matter. So the phrase we always hear, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I think we all know that that playground saying isn't really true, and that your words can harm other people, whether you intend for them to or not. And the reverse of that is that you can also really have a positive impact on somebody based on the words you use and what you say to them and the ideas that you share. It works both ways. The point is, words are not neutral. Words are not just simple tools. Communication is attached to human beings. There are values and thoughts and feelings and opinions. And so, as a speaker, you have a big responsibility to think about all of these things, as well as remembering what it is you want to talk about, what you care about, and what your views are. So, it's really a big job. And fundamentally, our speech can either unite or it can divide, right? So, and this is not necessarily just a political view on this, but all of our words are in the service of bringing people together and making connection or separating from other people and creating rivalries or enemies. It's uniting or it's dividing, and that's just human nature. So, thinking about what kind of speech you want to be engaged in. My hope is that you want to be engaged in speech that unites and not divides. So this quote, the title of this video, Speech is a Powerful Lord, it comes from the quote that reads as following: Speech is a powerful Lord, which by means of the finest and most invisible body affects the divinest works. It can stop fear and banish grief and create joy and nurture pity. So this is from Gorgias, from Encomium of Helen, and that is an ancient Greek text where the philosopher Gorgias was defending Helen, regarding the Peloponnesian War and all of that Greek mythology stuff. But this is a quote that came from that speech, and it has been foundational to the study of rhetoric and the understanding of rhetoric, the idea that speech is powerful. And in this quote, we see body effects, we see fear and grief, joy and pity. So our speech can really invite all of those feelings in an audience. It can create anger, it can create hate, it can create humor and laughter, it can create chills and goosebumps and all of those things. So, I mean, if it were up to me, I would spend this entire class talking about the power of speech and looking at examples of powerful speech. But that's not what this class is about. But it is still important to recognize how powerful your words can be, and as this relates to speaker responsibility and ethics. I have just here a few examples of, you know, influential speech. And influential goes both ways. So obviously, Lincoln in the Gettysburg Address, in the Emancipation Proclamation, those were speeches that literally ended the war. and freed slaves. I mean, that is some pretty powerful speech. Martin Luther King Jr. in the height of the civil rights era in the 60s, the I Have a Dream speech, the March on Washington. Look at what that was able to stir up in the country and respond to in the country. Now, effect doesn't necessarily mean, ending a war or passing a law, but it certainly can. Effect can also be things like mobilizing people, bringing people together, and inspiring people. Reagan, that is an example from the Challenger Address. So that is something that I actually do like to show in class. It's the speech after the Challenger shuttle exploded in 1989, and that was a huge tragedy, and it was televised. It was live on television, and obviously they did not know it was going to explode, but it did, and everybody saw it. And so he had to address the nation that was very shocked and upset and mourning, and he was able to create a feeling of calm and peace with it. And if you watch the speech, you'll understand what I mean about creating that sense of peace. George W. Bush, after 9/11, a similar situation in that it was a tragedy. Obviously, the tragedies are not the same, but a similar situation addressing the nation after a tragedy and trying to help the audience understand what happened. So a lot of times the most significant power our speech can have is to help us understand. So there's a range of emotions. There's understanding, there's empathy, there's pity, there's calm, there's happiness, there's anger, right? I probably repeated one or two of those, but it really is powerful. And what I'm going to ask you to do in this module is reflect on speech that had some sort of impact on you. Now, it can be something from a movie or a TV show. There are often really good monologues, or, I mean, like a locker room speech in a sports movie or something like that. But films and movies are good places to look for this. Something that really moved you. What is something that had an impact on you? And my hope is that it moved you in a positive way, but of course it could have moved you in a negative way. And you can also look to current events, different political speeches, etc., for material on this as well. But thinking about speech that had a powerful impact on you. And to wrap this up, I want to mention that sometimes when we are thinking about negative consequences of speech, we often rush to, well, he or she didn't mean that, right? He or she didn't mean to offend. They didn't mean for it to sound that way. And what we need to know is that the speaker's intent and purpose is often irrelevant to the effect that the speech has. So it doesn't mean that the intent is completely irrelevant in general. It just means that the effect is separate. So it doesn't matter if a speaker intends it to come across one way and it comes across the other. What we care about is how it comes across. So that's something that I want you to connect to some of the ideas about censorship and cancel culture and freedom of speech and all of that. It's a very abstract concept, but I want you to think about it. I want you to ruminate on the fact that intent has nothing to do with effect. And effect can be different for one audience member than it is for another audience member. And I mean, speech can be really messy. Speech can be really messy, and I don't want this to further your anxiety. That is definitely not my intent, right? But if you are feeling like this is furthering your anxiety, just remember that these are concepts that are in the background that are shaping how we proceed in the class, that it does not mean that, you know, you are not free to express yourself the way you want to express yourself. This is a space where you're going to practice, where you are going to learn to be comfortable speaking your truth, but also becoming socially aware and speaking your truth in a way that builds unity and connection rather than division. So I think that's a really good note to end on, and I will see you all next time.